Okay. Everyone having a good day? Cool. Thanks for making it all the way through to the end and staying. Appreciate it. So, that's all cool. Just to clarify the session, because there's been some chopping and changing in the agenda, my session is going to be around managing your data platform lifecycle, which is basically how to manage a database infrastructure estate to try and ensure that you basically get the opportunity to move up to current and existing versions of SQL Server so that you've got a good estate to manage. Okay? If that's not what you're here for, there are other great sessions. I won't be offended if you want to find something more appropriate. It's absolutely key that you get the most out of your time here at the conference. So thank you very much, just to let you know. And with that, we'll kick off a minute early, if that's all right with people. And we'll let you try and get away towards the end of the day. Just to say, after this one, the expo floor, there is drinks and food and everything up there. So once we're finished here, if you head back up, there'll be some free food. There'll be drinks. I've got some drinks vouchers, hopefully, in your badges. And we'll go from there. So with that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you can just ask everyone to keep their phones on silent. If you need to take a call, please step out. Not a problem. Then come on back. If you miss anything, just come and grab me at the end. Happy to answer any questions. Paul's got a whole pile of extra things that we've got on offer here. Essentially, we've got 24 hours of Pass, online virtual groups, local groups. There's the SQL Saturday. There's the marathon events. There's a whole wealth of stuff there. If you go to the main site, have a look. You're all members now. You're signed up and here. Who am I? The big guy at the front with a weird accent. My name's John Martin, chartered IT professional, data platform MVP. Been working with Microsoft Data Platform for goodness knows how long, one form or another, across all the major areas around dev, BI, and operations. Contact details are there. I'll put them all up at the end again for you. If you've got any queries, questions after the case, feel free to reach out to me. I'm also a director of the PASS organization, so if you've got any feedback, I would love to hear it. Thank you very much. So, I'll explain, we're going to be talking about lifecycle management. Now, you'll hear about database lifecycle management, which is code and everything like that. That's great. But what we're going to focus on is why we need to be looking at being on the latest versions, how we can liaise with the business, our technical teams, to make sure we have everything in our arsenal to be able to get to where we need to be. So, the history for myself, I've worked Microsoft as a PFE, I've worked with large customers, small customers, and constant theme is people always hit end of life, and then it's like, no, I'm unsupported. Where I'm currently working, I've got two-thirds of my estate is technically out of support with Microsoft. I've been brought in to basically bring that system into a better shape. And these are some of the techniques I will have used, and I'll give you some of the sort of tools and the mindset and the way to approach things, okay? So we think about why managing lifecycle. We start thinking about some of the key dates. 2013, SQL 2000 goes end of life. It's 13 years old before it's out of the door. 2016, SQL 2005 goes end of life. Again, we're talking 10, 11 years. It's a product that, through the life cycle of SQL Server, has evolved dramatically. So between 2005 and 2016, when this one goes end of life, you've got 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, and 2014 current mainline. That's four versions of SQL Server. Okay. In addition to that, you've also got the cloud offerings that have come online as well from Microsoft. And then we rolled into this year, 2008 R2 go end of life. That's where the bulk of my current estate is. Okay. Approximately, let's think. Of that two-thirds, about 60% of that is 2008 R2 of a 400 instance estate. That's a big thing to upgrade. That's a big lump of nastiness to try and deal with. Okay? Not something that's really great fun. The next big landmark for us is 2022. SQL Server 2012 goes end of life. I've got systems that are still being deployed and will go into production next year that the business has been working on and trying to work through and deploy for the last 4 years. It's going live on 2012 in 2021. Okay? These are problems that we all face. The business is like, well, it ain't broke. Why do I need to fix it? Okay? Well, now I'm going to try and give you some compelling reasons why. First and foremost, old servers are like zombies. They just hang around forever, they stagger up, and then suddenly you've got a big critical mass of those things banging on the door, making your life miserable, okay? Really want to try and figure out, so yeah, what now? We need to try and get rid of them, okay? Try not to let the horde come together. We want to pick them off, deal with them early on, small pieces. It's like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Don't try and take the whole thing. So one of the key things we need to look at is Microsoft drives the lifecycle. The lifecycle is available to us on the web. When they release a version of SQL Server, we know that in 10 years' time, it drops dead. Quite simply, 10 years. It's a long time. When we start thinking about businesses, we're refreshing a lot of our hardware as well, because basically we're insourcing. It's not been managed great, not fun. But whereas before you'd be talking about 3-4 year life cycle, now when it comes to our hardware platforms, we're actually talking 7 to 10 years. We're starting to look at that projection. Taking that from a hardware perspective and bringing that back down and trying to sort of realize that return on investment, I need to get the most out of it. How do we do that? What are the sort of cycles I need to go through? How do I need to plan right now for future versions? 2019's gone GA, okay? I don't want to be on 2019 on the back end of the 2020s. So we try and work that out, okay? So the first thing we need to really think about is just not being governed by Microsoft's lifecycle. It's one of the key things that many businesses will do. Well, is it vendor supported? And there's various different flavors and ways that it is and is not supported depending on how you're working with SQL Server. Now this is dealing with what I'm going to refer to essentially as the retail SQL Server version. This is the one that we'll download the ISO for, the one that we're installing on a Windows operating system, the one we're putting on a Linux operating system, the one we're putting in containers, virtual machines, physical hardware, IaaS virtual machines, okay? The servicing for that, Microsoft will provide us with the bits, and we are then responsible for managing that, okay? Now, as we go through that, we think about this as a timeline. We'll deal with 2012. 2012 came out all those years ago, back in May 2012. Okay? 2012, oh, that's a typo, great. 2013, that should be, they released Service Pack 1. Then we get Service Pack 2. Then we get Service Pack 3 and Service Pack 4. Now, who here is aware that 12 months after the next service pack, the prior one is technically unsupported? Good, few of you. Few not. So this is one that trips up a lot of people. They're like, well, first of all, I'll wait for Service Pack 1. That's junk. Okay, for 2012 and 2014, Service Pack 1 introduced more problems than it fixed and had to be reissued a couple of times. So that's not great. That's going away. We'll forget about that. But RTM to 2012, Service Pack 1 comes out. 12 months down the line, we'll say, well, Service Pack 2 comes out. I get another 12 months of Service Pack 1. But 12 months after Service Pack 1 comes along, RTM is no longer supported. If you ring Microsoft support, they'll be like, well, upgrade. Then we'll talk. I know they do, because I used to have to say that when I was a PFE. Okay, the servicing cycle we go through. Now, Service Pack 4 that came out there all that time in 2017, it was the same year SQL Server 2012 rolled out of mainstream support and into extended support. Okay, this is where we're getting security updates, no real bug fixes. Okay, so unless it's security related, we're getting diddly. Okay, that's really not fun. And then we're off into 2022. That's not fun, because that's when it's out of support. That's something I'm going to be facing, obviously, in the next couple of years. How many people here have still got 2012 in production right now? Yep, still there. So have you all got plans to get off of that before 2022? No, I don't either. I've got to get somewhere. I've got to try and get that 2008 out the door first. Okay? Now, this is something what I'm going to talk about now. Who's aware of the extended coverage option that Microsoft has? Okay. Right. You can get an extra 3 years. It is not cheap. Okay? In order to be eligible for this, so I had to take some of this for some of my 2008 estate. So I had to buy cores. You've got to have those cores under software assurance, and then you're essentially paying 75% of the purchase cost per year for that extended coverage, and that will get you security updates only. Doesn't mean that you extend support, okay? So if you are really up against it, and you've got some form of compliance that says, well, you need to make sure you're getting security patches, there is an option, but it is not cheap. When you think about enterprise-grade licensing, okay, you have to buy 100 cores, you're talking 6 zeros behind that one, okay? Not good. Where are we? We're well on our way to that. So how do we actually manage to stop this? How do we prevent this from biting us again? How do we avoid the 2005, 2008 where we're rolling through and we're getting that big zombie horde of unsupported SQL servers? Define your own support schedule, okay? Take what Microsoft give you as a starter for 10, okay? Now, what we did when I joined the company I'm in at the moment, we did an analysis, how many SQL servers have we got, what state are they in, what are the versions, and we start to become very, very apparent we're in a bad situation, okay? So I want to nip this in the bud, so I want to make sure we're forcing them to buy new versions, okay? So we're going to have a look and say, okay, well, what's the support lifecycle? So we start breaking things down. Again, we'll stick with 2012 for this one. The SQL Server version, I'm going to say, okay, 2012, we've got RTM and the service packs, okay? When are they released? When does mainstream support end? Now, the reason you're going to see this one here around mainstream support ending with an NA for the service packs is because the service packs themselves have that support lifecycle which I mentioned earlier. The big one that we're looking for is once the final service pack comes out and Microsoft say, right, we're done, okay? That's when extended support comes in as well. That's we're in trouble. And then we've got the service pieces here, okay? Now, how many people have got an effective patching routine for their SQL servers to apply service packs? Yeah, do now, didn't have. That servicing model is changing quite dramatically. In the newer version, 16, 17, now 19, we're going to see a high rate of release for cumulative updates as opposed to service packs. The impact of that on the servicing and life cycle, I don't know yet, okay? I would still expect to see service packs which roll up large numbers, but the frequency that these are going to be coming is indeterminate, okay? So this is going to be an interesting one to see how the life cycle for it changes going forwards. But up until 2016, we're still good, okay? Now, how do we convey this to our superiors, our seniors, our business, and say, right, I need you to help me make sure that we're not in a bad situation here, okay? So this is where we need to start thinking about, okay, I've got these life cycle dates. I want to take those, but I want to put them in such a way to the business that we're in different buckets of the life cycle. And this is where we start saying, okay, I'm going to categorize these, okay? Think about it how they're buying and managing assets, because that's essentially what this is for us, okay? So first and foremost, I've got eval. This is a versions of SQL Server that I'm evaluating currently. So that would have been 2019 up until GA, okay? Service Pack 1 may come along and we'll put that in eval, see how it works, make sure Microsoft hasn't thrown us a curveball, that type of thing, okay? Then we have buy. If you are deploying a new version of SQL Server or a new system into our estate, it can only come from the buy category and the versions of SQL Server that are associated with it. Hold. So essentially we move from buy to hold. So when you think about the lifecycle servicing that Microsoft have got, you've got 12, 14, 16, 17, 19 now, all supported versions in one form or another. I don't want all of them in my buy category, okay? Where I am at the moment, I am basically saying I will deploy current and the prior version, okay? 2019 coming out, I'm going to add that to the buy pot as well and probably leave it 6 months before I start looking to see what drops off the back end for 16 and put that into hold. Doesn't mean I can't deploy it, but it means it's not my first choice. You've got to justify to me why I've got to start taking on technical debt into my estate. Because having various different versions of SQL means I'm going to have different support capabilities, different chances of getting support staff in. So Query Store obviously comes along. I want all my systems to have Query Store. I don't want to be deploying old 2014 with no Query Store in it. It's going to make my life difficult because I can standardize my scripts, I can standardize my troubleshooting mechanisms, and I can work forward from there. Okay, so you put them into hold. If there's a vendor application coming through the door that has a necessity for that earlier version, then we'll think about it. My default answer is go find a new vendor, very bluntly, and go back to the business and say, this is going to cost us more money from support and overhead perspective, and we're going to have to drive an upgrade earlier in the life cycle. Okay? What we will talk about towards the back end is around some of the options you've got to sort of, I don't know, best way to put this. Speak to the vendors and convince them that the latest version can be used with their software that doesn't support it. Okay? There's some really good things that Microsoft have done around that and actually put in writing that we can leverage. Then we've got the sell bucket. This is where I'm actively trying to remove it from the business. Okay? In this scenario, it's gone into whatever stage in the life cycle that I've defined, and I'm turning around saying, actually, now I need to start actively upgrading these. I need to start removing these versions from the business. Now that could be I'm upgrading and service packing them, so moving them from Service Pack 3 to Service Pack 4 for 2012 to get them up into a sort of hold pattern, sell pattern, that type of thing, so I've got at least extended support to fall back on should I need to. But at the same time, you can turn around and then say, what I want you to do is when we see this, we can start planning. But this sell bucket, you're going to have a period of time before it becomes technically unsupported. Now, that unsupported does not have to be Microsoft unsupported. That unsupported is unsupported by you, okay? You own the infrastructure. You own the estate. You're the subject matter experts, okay? You're in a position to say to the business, this is untenable for us to support at this age, okay? We're 5, 6 years down the line. That period between sell and unsupported needs to be large enough to actually allow you to, at the very least, get at least 90% of that stuff out of the business. Okay? Well worth having a look at. Now, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? How many people think they can actually go back to the business and explain this and put it to them and say, I want to adopt this model? Yeah. It's an interesting one. Some people think, yeah, maybe it's going to take a bit of persuasion. The company I'm at, let's say, at the moment, I've dropped in, trying to remediate a large problem. I've got this sign-off because I managed to get executive level buy-in because I've been able to convey the business impact and the business risks, okay? So if anyone here deals with PCI DSS compliance? A few. Right, boom, shoe in. PCI DSS says supported versions of software, essentially you're able to patch them and things like that. Yes, we have a ticket that the business understands. Anyone doing HIPAA or things like that, where you've got these compliance ones, use them. They're a real pain in the ass for us to work with, to meet all of the audit requirements, but we can leverage them because the business will understand them. They will not want audit points against them. It's like, well, it's unsupported, therefore we have an audit point, so let's get a move on and move it. Okay? But these categories are not just, sorry.
Just a comment. For us, it's more or less convincing the vendors.
Okay. So the okay. Okay. So the feedback there is that the biggest challenge is getting the software vendors where you've bought the product that you need to upgrade to newer versions. I'm going to cover that towards the back end of the session. Okay. Some really good stuff from Microsoft come around to help us on that one. Okay. So what we do is we take those buckets, those categories, and we build our own life cycle. Okay? So we start thinking about 2016 here. I'm also including 2017. And these are the default life cycle dates that come out from Microsoft. Great, but they leave me no wiggle room. So what I do, I move them to dates that I want. Okay? Now typically what I look to do is when I've got more than one, or more than 2 active versions, then I'll move stuff into hold. The other 2 active ones will be buy. Okay? I will look forward and say, okay, well, when do we drop out of mainstream and into extended support? Because that's my sell period, essentially, okay? I want to make sure that I've got myself, I'm into hold well before I'm into extended support territory. So I don't want to be deploying new servers where I've only got extended support. So find that date, move forward 12 months, depending on what you're looking at, and saying, I need to be moving this one out, okay? Because even though we've got service packs and we may be supported, By moving this 12 months forwards, we're in a position where we're not going to hit extended support. We can get those bugs. Anyone here develops, does anyone here have systems where you're actively developing your own code on the SQL Server platforms? Okay. So anything where you've got active change, you're more likely to hit bugs. So when you go back to the business and explain the risks, it's like, well, we're actively developing functionality and capability. We may discover bugs. If we are in extended support, we will not get bug fixes. Okay, it's not a case we might not, we will not. You'd be in full support and you may not get them because they're not big enough bugs and what have you. I've been on that end of things back in 2008. But we need to really start thinking about putting that into context and say, okay, explain this, document the risk, and if the business wants to sign off on that risk, up to them. But so long as you can convey it, it's another piece of, it's another sort of argument for you to put into that pack and say, right, the risks on their own, quite small, but when you aggregate them up, become quite pressing for us, okay? Making sense? Cool. So, once we've done that, what we want to look at trying to do is turn around and say, okay, I want to look at my estate and apply that to my estate, okay? So this is where we want to start saying, how many of each one have we got? Now, I'm not going to show you my one because you'll all fall about laughing. So I've made these numbers up. But essentially what I'm saying here is 2016 RTM is technically unsupported at the moment, okay? Because the service packs and the time they've been out. How many of those have you got? I don't want to support multiple versions of it. I want it standardized. That's what I'm conveying. Yeah, it's SQL Server 2016, but I want the highest service pack available to me. So if I have to ring Microsoft and say, help, they will do it. Okay. If you've just got, if you've got Premier support, again, you'll get told this. Same as if you ring up with your credit card, log a ticket that way as well. Okay. But you can see there I had 2019 release candidates there in eval. Now, obviously, 2019's gone GA. I'm quite happy to deploy SQL Server 2019 day one because I know that Microsoft have been running it underpinning Azure SQL Database managed instance in the cloud. Okay. That's been running for a long time. It's not like it's been okay, here we go, and now we'll upgrade Azure. That's what's running behind the scenes. That's tested at scale. I'm confident it's going to work. And again, when you start talking to the business and you come up to that mindset of, well, we'll wait for Service Pack 1. A, Service Pack 1 could be 2 years away. B, we're going to get cumulative updates rapidly. Microsoft are running this code in production. Yes? Okay, so the statement there is Service Packs are discontinued with 2017. That'll be fun. Only CUs from now on. Okay, thank you for that update. I will update my content. So that's going to hurt. So what does this look like? So Excel is our friend. I say that. Excel works because that's what business people like. So I'm going to include, as part of the downloads on the website, you'll get a copy of the spreadsheet that's got all of these tables in, so you can sample and build your own ones out. But essentially, what we look at here is, these are the different versions we've got. Okay, this is the lifecycle dates that I'm putting in place. I'm also documenting what the vendor support lifecycles are as well, which is great. And then I can justify the difference as well. One of the important things to have here is the owner. Who's taking ownership of this? Who's accountable? In this case, it's me. Okay, I'm defining these dates. This is me driving it. I'm accountable. Okay. And then what we'll look at doing is we're taking that and putting it into our estate in the context that we have there. In this scenario, whole pile of stuff unsupported. But what we're looking at here as well is to turn around and say, this is the current state, and then 3, 6, 12, and 18 months. Start doing those projections, okay? Run it through Power BI, that type of thing. Who here's using things like ServiceNow and CMDB and stuff like that? If you put your lifecycle stuff into there, run Power BI reports and dashboards off it. It makes life a lot easier than having to hack it all together in Excel. Don't do it manually, automate it. But by projecting it, it then allows you to start building a roadmap. Okay, and we'll cover that in a minute. But once we put it into that form, Excel's great. Business people like Excel, but they like pretty pictures first. Okay, and again, it's just projecting current to where we are. So show the composition of your estate. This type of thing, I'm not a fan of pie charts. My manager is. I'm not. I prefer sort of stacked bar charts. But it clearly, you want to demonstrate this proportion of our estate transitions from buy to sell to hold, or buy to hold to sell to unsupported. So you can start projecting that forwards, but make sure you give yourself enough of a runway to start acting on stuff. You may have to go and get a business case. It may be linked to hardware refreshes, maybe it's all sorts of stuff. You may have projects, software, that type of thing. Okay. Any questions? Loud. So, blockers. Coming back to what you were saying earlier, application requirements. Lots and lots of vendors will turn around and say, well, we support 2012, we support 2014, we support 2016, okay? I used to work for software ISV. We were guilty of that. I say we were guilty of that. We would be supporting SQL Server, whatever it was, on day one of release, because we had to monitor it and we ran our databases on it. So it was part and parcel of our business model that we were supporting the latest versions of SQL. Not every software vendor is like that. Okay, if they're outside of our ecosystem, if they're business applications, a lot of them don't have necessarily the drive, the determination to actually make that happen. Okay? How do we get around that? Well, we'll cover that in a bit. Okay? Infrastructure implementation, physical versus virtual. Okay, operating system requirements. I've still got physical SQL servers in my estate. They're 2008, big clusters, large blade chassis, difficult things to upgrade from a hardware perspective. And the hardware's got an end-of-life date as well. Businesses really, if they've spent tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds on hardware, want to wring every last cent out of it. Okay? I've got big sort of double-height blades, blade chassis, a couple of £100,000 to deploy these across a couple of data centers. I'm not going to get rid of them easily, okay? But when they come to being end of life, okay, how do we manage this? Do we just upgrade them? Oh, well, it's always been physical, we'll upgrade that. It's a pain in the ass. Let's move to virtual. There's still some holdouts out there that don't want to go from physical to virtual, believe it or not. Still got to unpick some of that. Then there's licensing dependencies. Now, this was a massive one for 2008, okay? 2008 was the last generation of SQL Server that effectively had socket-based licensing. 2012 introduced core-based licensing. Now, there were some true-ups and things where you transfer from one to the other if you had software assurance. Who here has software assurance on all their cores? Some of you don't. Software assurance is a reoccurring, obviously, payment, basically allowing you then unlimited upgrade rights or downgrade rights, things like that. But again, selling that to the business around, I need to spend 25% of my buy cost annually to be able to upgrade can be a difficult sell until it hits the end of the line, and then it's like, well, now you've got to rebuy all your licenses because there is no upgrade option. And again, it's just sort of putting things off, kicking the can down the road. So again, trying to explain to the businesses and the business people and the finance people, this is a good return on investment. You pay maintenance on your software, okay? I'd hope you're paying maintenance on many of your other software platforms to give us upgrades, to give us support, to give us all of this, okay? So again, those are some of the dependencies that we have. Licensing. Moving up, I mean, I'm very lucky I've got all my cores covered by software assurance. I just don't have the willingness in the business to actually done the work up until now. Which brings me on to the effort required. Now, how many people here have got upwards of 300, 400 servers in their estate? Okay. How many of them have got them cataloged effectively so you know every software version that's in there? Windows operating system and SQL Server. One person. Yeah. I've walked into an environment where I've got System Center Configuration Manager, SCOM, and a software auditing platform, and a security auditing platform, all telling me I've got a different number of SQL servers. It's like, okay, this is going to be fun. And I've got a third-party outsourcer billing me for N number as well, which doesn't really line up with what's in all of these other systems. So that's a big one there, is actually going out and doing the discovery. There are tools that we can use, and I'll demonstrate one of them in a bit. Really useful little tool. It's an old one that Microsoft produced, but I use it everywhere because it makes life so much easier for discovery. There's a lot of options that we can do there, okay? But being able to quantify everything that you need. So it's not just a case of saying, well, I've got 50 SQL Server 2012 30 SQL Server 2016s, whatever. It's about going in and saying, I've got this version of SQL Server, I've got this many of them. On there, I have this many databases. I have this sort of configuration around the servers. I've got this many users. I've got this much data coming in. It's a big task, necessarily, to say, okay, well, what is the impact of upgrading many of these things? There's basically the skills required. Now, there's two ways that we can look at this. There's people where you can turn around and say, I don't want to go to the new version because my current staff don't know it. And then there's also the case of saying, well, the natural attrition as your staff leave, you can't get new staff who've got the skills for the older versions. And you're in a catch-22. So in this sort of scenario, the big one there is allying server upgrades, version upgrades, with effective training as well. Bring people to things like Summit. Pluralsight is a fantastic resource. SQL Server Central with the Stairway series and all of the blogs and everything like that from the likes of SQL Skills. Fantastic resources available. But again, this is something that requires effort, it requires investment necessarily. Not always money, but potentially time. And trying to make all of that work, again, going out to the business and explaining, I need basically to allow my staff to upskill to be able to deliver this. Now, who here's got labs to play with in their environment? Yes. If you don't have a lab, Azure, AWS. Wonderful platforms where you can start playing with the new versions very, very quickly and easily. In certain cases with minimal overheads. Well worth having a look at, okay? Technology changes as well. When you think going from 2008 R2 to 2012, we got the addition of availability groups over just having failover cluster instancing. It was a different way of doing high availability. Now with 2019 and the licensing there, we've got much, much better benefits. Again, with software assurance, coming back to that one, with software assurance in place, I've now essentially got an increased number of cores that I can use for disaster recovery, both on-premises and in the cloud. So that makes our life a little bit easier. But again, having all of that in place, you need the skills to be able to leverage those new technologies that come with that version of SQL Server. And then there's our good old friend apathy. Well, it ain't broke, so why do I need to bother fixing it? And that's why some of us have probably still got SQL 2000 kicking around. I mean, I'm lucky, I've only got 3 of them left, and both of them, well, all 3 of them are planned for going out the door by the end of this year. Actively developing systems to move things out of there. But, well, it's just ticking away. It's old data, it's not doing very much, there's not high transactional workloads, it's static, we're not changing the code, we just use it for reference. Okay, in those instances, it can be very difficult to say, well, why should I incur the cost and the time and the effort to actually make that upgrade? But again, it just leaves you open to those risks around compliance and such like. Okay. So this is where we start thinking about how we unblock lifecycle management. Don't certify applications against software versions. So, I used to work for this vendor. We would say 2016, 2014, 2017, all the versions that were coming, managed instance, whatever, okay? We're certifying we work with these ones. The reason that many people do that is because that's the common vernacular that we'll use, the version of SQL Server, okay? The reality is we should be talking about database compatibility level, okay? So, obviously, you remember 80, 2000, 90, 2005, okay, 100, 2008, and then we move forwards. Running the database specific compatibility mode will give you the behaviors associated with that version, okay, but you're still running on a supported platform. Now, if you go to that link, aka.ms, dbcompat, Microsoft have very kindly documented that by running older compatibility mode on newer versions of SQL will give you a 99.99% chance that you're going to have exactly the same query plan shapes, okay? So essentially what they're saying is, it'll be shiny and new, but it'll look like the old one, okay? It'll look like our comfy slippers, but they won't smell as bad, okay? That's in writing from Microsoft. That is how I've managed to get the agreement from the business to start going through and largely upgrading our 2008 R2 estate with minimal testing overhead. There's still going to be some testing, but I don't have to do full regression and integration testing because Microsoft will give me that guarantee, and it's backed by support. Once I'm on to 2016 and I'm running in 2008 compatibility mode, if I ring them up with a support ticket and say, it ain't working like it should do, I've got them for it, and they'll help me with it. It's really, really important. Now, if you want to speak to someone, so coming back to what you were saying earlier, you've got the vendors saying, well, we only support this version. Up in the Microsoft booth, there's a guy called Pedro Lopes, okay? He floats around most of the day. Have a chat with him. He is one of the champions for this, and he's actively looking to speak to vendors who turn around and say, well, no, we're not upgrading because I don't support that particular version. He will help you champion this database compatibility mode, okay? Well worth having a chat with him. If you've got any concerns around that, he can help you with the strategy and potentially conversations with vendors, or at least work with people. So talking about compatibility levels, we're going to start thinking about what we had, 2008 R2. Now, I had some interesting ones recently where systems were running on 2008 R2, but they were running in 2005 compatibility mode, okay? Now, one of the things you've got to think about is, okay, if I upgrade it to 2012, great, I've still got 90. Take it to 2014, I don't, okay? Basically, with all the key supported ones, now the baseline compatibility version is 2008 R2, which makes life a little bit easier for us because that's the big one that's just gone off the back end for us, okay? So we start thinking about the compatibility levels. I can take those 2008 R2s, put them on 2017, and still run in the old compatibility mode. Now, one of the things to be aware of is if you have got to go up from 90, that even if you're running on to 2012 at the moment with the compatibility mode of 90, turning that up to 100 can have some issues. One of the key things to watch out for is around 4XML. Behaves differently between 90 and 100 compatibility mode. So even on those ones, just making that little flip, that's when you're going to start experiencing the issues. But once you've got it on a supported platform, you can start making those tests. You can get everything where you need to be. So if you're coming from 90 on 2008 R2, you're in trouble. But so long as you're running at SQL 2008 R2 level, so compatibility level 100, we've got that option, okay? But what that also means is we have the ability to jump to the cloud, because that will support all the way back to 100 as well, okay? So, any questions about this? Okay. One thing I do want to call out is database engine version of 12, okay? The 12 denotes essentially the underlying Azure engine version. It's not related to 120, which I think was 2014, okay? There used to be version 10 databases, which were quite restricted, first generation of Azure SQL Database, version 12, essentially the latest generation of Azure SQL databases, okay? Don't be put off by that. It's essentially, at the moment, 2019 under the hood, okay? So just bear that in mind. Do watch out, however, if you have got code that looks for major versions, because that's what you'll get back, okay? Now, I spoke about software assurance. Good lifecycle management. This is what gives us the ability to upgrade seamlessly. Well, I say seamlessly, from a licensing perspective. Actually doing the physical upgrades can be a real pain in the backside, okay? But essentially, by having this, it means that we've got not only upgrade rights, but we also then have disaster recovery options open to us. Let's say with the 2019 side of things, we've got basically all those cores that we can have, DR set up, and then there's DR ones in the cloud as well. Obviously, with SA as well, we get the unlimited virtualization rights on premises. So if you're going to do high levels of consolidation with physical servers, so I'm going from 180-ish VMware hosts probably down to about 90, but they're going to be bigger, more cores, that type of thing. I can really sort of squash those in and stack those VMs high. I'm going to put 4 terabytes of RAM in there, that type of thing. Okay, memory is typically your big constraint on these. So we're going to go in, we're going to do that sort of thing. With SA, on Enterprise Edition, you get unlimited virtualization rights, which makes life a lot easier, okay? So again, we can start realizing better return on investment for hardware, again, you can sell that to the business. This is why I need software assurance. Yes, I'm paying some money every year, but it means I don't have to have such a large number of servers out there and I don't have to buy extra cores. Okay? There's another option as well, and this is something that many businesses are starting to look at, and it's essentially moving from a sort of CapEx model to an OpEx model. Okay? You can go to many sort of VARs and things like that and look at the CSP licensing options, and this basically moves it from purchase, perpetual with software assurance to a reoccurring subscription type licensing scenario. Now, one of the big problems you face with the more traditional models of licensing is you can true up under SA with various agreements you have with Microsoft, but you can never true down. And CSPs help to avoid that. So as you start migrating workloads to the cloud, you can either take the SA licenses and offset your cloud spend, or if you're under things like CSP license, come to the end of it for a renewal on a 12-month basis, you can true down. So I'm decommissioning servers, I'm moving it to software as a I'm moving it to platforms as a service with Azure SQL Database, things like that. Now I don't need 150 cores, but I need 100. At the end of that 12-month cycle, boom, down we come. Again, that's going to drive the lifecycle management, moving to managed instance, moving to Azure SQL IaaS, where the license cost is rolled into your monthly billing spend, things like that. We move it around, and again, it helps us justify what we're doing and gives us more versatility. Okay. We all comfortable with anything there? Has anyone got any questions? Okay. I guess I'm making sense. So, one of the key things we need to understand about is, we all discussed earlier, we've got a large number of servers, and we not all necessarily know what we've got out there. So investing in proper tooling to do that discovery and that analysis. Now, you can go out there and you can implement SCCM, but that's quite painful and can be quite expensive. There are various free and open source tools out there where you can do heavy network scanning, but a lot of that you have to then wrap all your own stuff around as well, okay? Who has heard of the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit? MAP. Wonderful tool. I say it's a wonderful tool. I didn't think it was wonderful when I first discovered it about 10 years ago when I was on the wrong end of a licensing audit, but it is a really, really useful tool, and every time I drop into a customer and I need to discover something, I use MAP. Okay? Download it. It's free from Microsoft. There's two ways of running it. Essentially, what you can look at is saying, okay, I want to just run this little application with local DB, or you can install a Express instance with an instance name of maps, and then what it'll do is data it captures, it'll put into the SQL instance, will allow you to query it manually. Now, in addition to that, you've also got various other tools as well for capturing performance information. We don't all have the sort of money to go out and spend with Sentry Ones and Quests and Redgates. Okay? There are some fantastic resources out there, and the links are going to be in the slide deck for you, where essentially the Microsoft team have pulled together some information around how to monitor the SQL Server platforms, and they do this in the CAT lab, and you can use it for monitoring things like managed instance, but essentially using Influx, Telegram, and Grafana. So you can build your own monitoring solution, pull that in using time series, and review all of the data. Okay, well worth having a look at. Then we've also got things like DBA tools and DBA checks. There's a guy called Rob Sewell doing sessions around. He helps write those open source projects, okay? DBA tools, if you want to do discovery and you know where your SQL servers are, it's all done with PowerShell, which means it's highly scalable, okay? We don't have to build CMS infrastructures and things like that. We can just use a bit of PowerShell to go off and basically say, right, here are all my servers, these are the credentials I need you to use, go and pull all that information back for me. DBA checks is a sort of PowerShell version of policy-based management that works, is probably the best way to put it. And then there's XE Smart Target. Now, this is a tool I use for analyzing workloads on target systems, okay? So if it's extended events based, I will run up an extended events session and I will point XE Smart Target at it, and it will latch onto the live session. So I haven't got to write it out to a file. XE Smart Target will consume all of that information, and then I can run aggregates. So I can say, actually, I want to look for all the deprecated feature usage through extended event sessions, and I want to write it out to a database table, or I want to do this or that thing. So I basically say every 30 seconds, write it down, update that, so I've got the count, first saw it, last saw it, how many times, what's the average, what's the event. Okay? These are all tools which are essentially free. well worth having a look at. No spend there, okay? Because if we're buying software assurance, maybe need to save some money somewhere else. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at map, just so you can get a feel for what it's like. So give me 5 seconds. Make sure my mouse is working. Duplicate. Okay, everyone can see this all right. We can see map. Okay, so I've already started map. Now what I can do is, in here, when I run this up, I'm going to run it in the local database option. So I'm basically saying I want to create a new database. So yeah, we'll just do File, create a selected database, and we'll call it Summit 2019. Okay. So what this means is if I come down to Environment, I've got a couple of options here. One is around collecting inventory data, and the other is performance data. So we'll concentrate on inventory data right now. So I'll click on that, and then I get this prompt here. And these are all the things it can actually go out and query for. So Windows computers, Linux, VMware hosts. So if you're running VMware, you can point it at the vSphere, and it will go and enumerate that for you, and it will start linking things together around hosts, what the capacities are. It will go and look at Active Directory, Exchange, link, all that sort of stuff. But if I scroll down, up again, whoop. The interesting ones here for us are SQL Server, 2 different options, with database deals and details and SQL Server on its own. Essentially, this will allow us all of the instance information, but it will also then say, if I've got access, I can drill into the databases and find a lot more information themselves. Okay, so we can tick both those. You'll also notice that we've got options here for Oracle. So if anyone is running Oracle, you can go and query that one and find that information as well. So if I tick SQL Server with database details and Windows computers, we'll click Next. These are the discovery mechanisms. Come on, here we go. Okay. Everyone see that right at the back? So it'll go off and it can query Active Directory. So look for all the computer objects and feed that into a list, and it'll start scanning the network. Or we can do discovery through networking protocols. We can call out to SCCM. You can specify IP address ranges, manually enter computer names, credentials, import computer names from file, however you want to do it. One thing I would say is if you are going to do this and you've got a network security team, tell them so that they figure out that you're going to scan the network, because that's what it does. One source will go out and it will fan out. Be also aware that if you say go and scan everything in the AD, it will try and go and scan everything in AD. Now, if some of those are in different sites, it's going to be pulling it over WAN links, all that sort of stuff. Think of this as a big funnel down to a single machine. Okay? The way I approach this is I pull all the computer details out of Active Directory with PowerShell, and then feed in lists of servers at a time. So I'll start with production or non-production, things like that, depending on the naming conventions, and I'll work back from there. Make sure I exclude end-user compute devices, because I really don't care what's out there. Not for now, anyway. I know there's going to be Excel, and I know there's going to be Access, and I don't want that, okay? So I'm going to just leave it on that for the time being, because my little demo environment has got all the bits and pieces. I just need to put in the information here, so summit.lab. And then my account, and then my password. So this account that we're going to use here is the one that's going to connect to the Active Directory for us and discover all the domain conjoined computers for us, which is great. But then if you've also got a DMZ where you've not got domain joined machines, things like that, you may want to also look at leveraging either IP address ranges or networking protocols to augment that. They're additive, not one or the other. Okay? What it will do is it will dedupe them as well as it does the scan. So if I do that, then I say, yep, we're going to go and find all of these, or we can start locking it down and we can drill down and say, okay, well, I only want to find things in specific domains, containers, OUs. Makes life a little bit easier if you've got a well-structured Active Directory, which I don't think you will have. Because Active Directory, it's always well structured at one point, and then the business changes and it all goes to pot. Okay, but if you have got it, you can query and find things through there. So we go next. Now we've got the option to create a number of different accounts, And what this will allow us to do is I say, okay, well, I've got one set of accounts for production, one set for non-production. I've got native SQL, so I'm using SQL auth. So I can put in various different accounts here. So if you've got 5, 6 different domains, all that sort of stuff, I can put these in here. So I'm just going to create one for the time being, which is my Summit one. And then my password, if I can remember it. Okay, and then you can say, okay, well, this one's going to be for WMI access to the OS, SQL account for Windows, but also if I've got other boxes that I tick, so for Oracle and VMware and things like that, I can link these up, okay? So if I just click Save for the time being, Next, and this is where we start saying, okay, well, which are the credentials we're going to use, what order are they going to be applied in, based around WMI, Windows, SQL, that type of thing, nice and easy. And then we come in here and say, okay, well, this is what we're looking for, and then hit Finish. Now, one of the things you will face, will have the option for, is when you add computers manually, or you add them via a specific list, you get the option to say, I want to specify a discrete account for this list, or I want to use the generic one I created at the first start, okay? So you have got that level of versatility. So we just click Finish. And that will go off, and it's going to do some scans for us. If I do this, we'll try and watch it live. So you can see down here, if I zoom in, it's counting away, it's doing WMI, it's doing registry checks, it's got some SQL Server pieces as well that it's scanning. Can you see that right at the back, or do you want me to zoom in more? Okay. So it's gone off and it's found those 4 machines for us, which is nice. So this should finish in a moment. Any questions, any queries? Any thoughts? So just to be aware, this will make use of RPC. And RPC typically will use high-range dynamic ports. So if you've got a segmented network where you're using I think, let's say NSX, or you've got large numbers of VLANs and firewalls in the way, you've got an app VLAN, you've got data VLANs and things like that, you may have to get firewalls open for the RPC ports and things like that as well to be able to make it happen, okay? So just be aware of that one. And it can seem very daunting for the firewall teams when you ask the high range. You can reconfigure servers so that you can limit the ranges for RPC, but that's a big overhead, and you have to really go in and look at doing that. You can do it with GPO, but it's not fun. Let's put it that way. Okay. So that's scanned and found 8 machines. We'll talk about that one in a minute. I've only got a 50% success rate. Reason being, I'm scanning an Azure network at the moment, and there's some weird stuff that map finds that it can't get into. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. The other option we have is performance data. And this is one where basically you can come down and say, for these Windows-based machines, I want to capture a period of time. So you basically set an end date. So you can do something that will sample it every 5 minutes, I believe, off the top of my head, unless they changed it. Essentially, it will go in and it will do that. So you can leave it running for a longer period of time. And that's really useful if you want to start doing consolidations, you want to start looking at planning for the cloud, that type of thing, because it will give you a feel for what your performance is over a period of time. It's a good place to start. I wouldn't do everything based off that, but that's where I can start. So just be aware that it's there. And you can specify the computers you want to do it for and the credentials are needed and what have you. I'm not going to run that just because that's going to take some time. I want to get in here and show you some stuff. So we've gone back to the overview side of things. We can see here I had 8 machines found. 4 of them were inventoried. And then I've got all the various different options around here as well. If we start with, let's come back to environment. You can see here, if I move that, 8 machines, 4 inventoried. I can see I've got 4 Windows servers. I can see I've got 3 Windows Server 2016s, 1 2008 R2. Okay, so I can start breaking down my OSs. Okay, and this is just because of the generic environment. If I put the performance metrics in there as well, I'll see some information around those. Okay. Now, if I come to the database tier, the database tab, this is where I can come in here and start seeing the full breakdown. So I can see here that for SQL Server, of all those virtual machines, I've got one SQL Server 2017 box, I've got 2008 R2, and it will scan all the way back to 2005. So if you don't know what you've got out in your run, yeah, please. You got a question?
So if you have different credentials for different servers that you mentioned, add multiple
Okay. Okay, so the question is, can you add multiple credentials if you've got different credentials you need to access each server? How does it know how to access them? There's two options. One is you specify a list and basically say, use this list, and it will try the first one. If it can't get in, it will try the next one, try the next one, try the next one, try the next one, then move on until it gets there. Okay. If you add servers in a more discrete way, so if you don't use the auto-discovery through Active Directory or things like that, and you actually specify servers, you can have that default one, but at the same time, when you specify the server, you can actually specify credentials that you think you should need. Okay? So in my case, where I pull out all of the non-production servers from Active Directory using PowerShell, the list of the machine accounts, I know they're active, I know they're non-prod because of the naming convention, or they should be non-prod with the naming convention. By that fact, I've also got a group policy in place that's pushing out a Windows Active Directory group which has got a specific account in it I use for map. Okay? So I've worked with the infrastructure guys and said, right, I need group policy. This is the Windows account. These are the Windows account I want for production and non-production. This is the group. I want these pushed out via group policy so that when I come to scan things, I know this account's going to work. Okay? Great for domain join stuff. Sucks when it comes to non-domain joined work groups. Okay? That's when you're going to have put that list in. Then you just got to watch out for account lockout policies and things like that as well. Okay? So just that answer your question? Cool. So yeah, I mean, from there we can see what's going on. I'll come to database, click on that. It'll take us in. We can see here some graphics, which is nice. We can also generate some reports, which I did earlier. So if we look at the inventory report, these LON ones are the weird ones that it picks up somewhere that are not in my subscription. So I don't know what those are. That's something I'm going to ask the guys upstairs when I speak to them in a bit. But I can see here I've got my client, I've got a domain controller, I've got 2 SQL boxes, I can see that the WMI got in there. I can see information around operating system. I can see adapter information, IP addresses, MAC addresses, all that sort of stuff. Nice and easy. That's just the basic inventory. Then if I look here at the SQL Server assessment, I'll get a breakdown of instances and all of the additional services, integration services, all that sort of stuff, nice and easy. And then if we look at database instances, computer name, instance names, SQL Server version. I've got the very granular version number there. I can see service pack, I can see SQL edition. So very quickly I can go out and say, right, scan everything, give me the information I need. I can see the languages in used, number of processors, hardware. Okay, so I can see everything here. Logical processors, physical processors, processor class, memory. I can do an audit of my entire estate very, very rapidly. Okay, I can see the additional components that are installed, reporting services, integration services, analysis services are. I can see all of those services. So this one tool will go out and accumulate all of this information for me. I can then feed that back into the CMDB. It's an exercise I'm doing right now on an estate of, like I say, 400 SQL servers spread across multiple sites around the globe. Makes my life a lot easier, because then I'll have one version of the truth. Then we come in and start looking at the database summary. Now this is where it will come in and say, okay, well these ones here, what are my databases? How big is the database? What's the log files, log file sizes, all of that sort of information comes in. Okay, we scroll across, I can see whether it's online, I can, basic collations, what the database owner is, backup timestamps, files, all that information there. But the real interesting one comes in when we start looking at database users details. So I can come here and say, okay, well, these are the databases, who's got access to them? And I can start going and say, okay, well, what do you use those for? At the moment, I've got nothing set up on this one. But as soon as you start pulling Active Directory groups in and things like that, I can then backport that and say, okay, well, which user accounts have access to my servers and databases? Okay, what are you using it for? Oh, we never use that anymore. Got rid of it. Fine. Bam. Gone. Don't need to upgrade it. Park it. Burn it. Done. Okay. Again, you get a lot of the instance properties there as well, so it'll pull SP configure. So we can see all the configuration options there. So we can start planning for what am I going to need when it comes to doing upgrades and stuff like that. Where can I focus? What's going to be the easy, quick wins? Again, we start zeroing in, looking at defining the scope and moving forwards from there. So the map toolkit itself, very, very powerful, very quick and easy to use. Go and download it. It's free on the Microsoft website. So, any questions about map whilst we're here? Okay. Right then, in that case, back to the slide deck. That's extended. There we go. So we're into the home straight. Might finish up a bit early unless you've got some more questions, in which case I'll let you get up to the beer. So, how do we unblock things? Apathy is one of the easier things we can deal with, okay? This is where we can just document risks, okay? You put risks in front of management, they don't like risks. They don't like putting their signature on stuff. They're like, make these go away, okay? Very, very easy, okay? Compliance and regulation makes life a lot easier. I've worked in PCI DSS, I've worked in health industry, I've worked for central and local government departments where we've had some things that we've had to work with. And then also explain to them about the difficulties in retaining and obtaining staff, okay? When it comes to this one, the big sort of kicker is to turn around and say, well, if I've got to go to a recruitment agency, I'm going to be paying them 15% of salary on top of this just to find another person. People with these older skills are going to ask for a lot more money, so our overhead's going to be more expensive. Again, put it into language that they understand. Justify why you need to keep your team trained up well. I spend $400 a year on a Pluralsight subscription for them. I don't have to pay 10 grand when a recruitment agent lands on my door and says I want 15, 20, 25% of a salary, okay? Making the jump to the cloud. Now, this is something we see a lot of people saying, oh, go to the cloud, it's great, it's easy. It's going to save you loads of money. Big, big disclaimer. It may save you loads of money. If it's a non-prod system that you can turn off 90% of the time. The reality is, if you lift and shift an infrastructure from on-premises to the cloud, you will pay more. Doesn't matter if it's Google. Well, Google's giving a computer away for free at the minute because they're playing catch-up. But if you're using a real cloud platform like Amazon or Microsoft, it will cost you more if you lift and shift. Plain and simple. That has been my experience in every system I've moved. Okay? You have, sorry? Exactly. You've got to pay rent. So it's an interesting, the only way you can save money is putting heavy, heavy effort into optimizing the performance of the system, okay? Takes a lot of work. Can be done, requires a lot of effort, requires skills, okay? Requires supporting capability. One interesting one to think about as well, if you do want to go up that route, is that IaaS will include SQL Server licensing and the OpEx monthly cost. So if you have got 2008 licenses and you don't have SA and you want to go to a new version, this does become a potential option for you if you can suck up the cost whilst you do that migration, okay? Then do the optimization and utilize things like Query Store to help improve the performance so you're doing less spend. That's another important thing to think about with the cloud as well. And this comes back to a sort of little tangent for us to go off on. Who here likes query tuning? Cool. If you like query tuning and your business is talking about going to the cloud, great. Because if you can tune a query better than the next person, you are more value to your business, okay? Because you can turn around and say, I can take us down 2 tiers on this VM. That saves us N number of dollars per month. You can put that on a bottom line, okay? If you can explain that to the business, they will love you, okay? So there are some bonuses for going to the cloud, but there are some sort of pitfalls you've got to watch out for, okay? PaaS solutions make our stuff go away. So, who was up in the keynote today? Show of hands. Yay, that was good. Who's interested in seeing what Arc can bring for us? Okay, yes. Arc has really piqued my interest. Okay, if they're going to pull off what they say they can pull off with, I can run software as a service, essentially platform as a service, database type scenarios on premises, then I haven't got to worry about upgrades, containers. I'm in. Okay. Makes all of that headache we spoke about earlier and the whole point of this presentation pointless, which is where I'd like to be in a couple of years' time. I don't want to be given this every year, okay? Look at the new options, look at the new technologies, keep up to date with things. Azure Arc is really, really exciting. I mean, the lifecycle refresh that I'm working through at the moment, 18 months, 2 years, hopefully I'm going to be lining up with that. So I will be badgering them something chronic, okay? So if we can get to PaaS, it makes a lot of our headaches go away. We introduce 1 or 2 other ones around software versions and vendors and things like that, but it gives us more versatility, and it makes some of our headaches go away, and we can concentrate on the day job and delivering value to the business. So, in summary, explain it all in language that the business can understand. They're the ones we need to convince, okay? Our technical brethren, nice and easy. We don't like working with old stuff. It's more of a headache. It's unsupported. If it goes wrong at 3 in the morning, I have no one to go to. All things, that business doesn't care about that, okay? It costs them more money. It means they've got potential revenue impact. It means that they're not compliant. These are things that matter to the business. Explain it in those sorts of terms. Buy, hold, sell. Unsupported. Again, language that procurement understands, that the business understands on a regular basis, makes life a lot easier. Data will win. Facts will win. Gather as much information and data around your infrastructure and the state of it as you can. Use MAP. That's just a great place to start. Put it in the CMDB. Use SCCM. Use DBA tools. Gather as much information as you can. Put it in nice, pretty pictures that managers like. Primary colors, and you should win. Okay? But if you've got facts, they can't come back to it. And if they do, you've got them in your back pocket. When it all goes south, you can say, told you so. Okay? There's a time back, it's got to be nearly 10 years ago, I wrote a report about the state of a platform. The failures I projected happened 2 months beyond where I'd expected them to happen. But everything fell down. End of month processing went from taking 8 hours to 2 days. Okay, reconciliation processes, because we didn't implement. They implemented the changes that we recommended, and we were happy. Okay, I had the data there. The data was borne out. If you can do that, it puts you in a much stronger position, because then you can go to your manager. You're not saying, I feel this or I think that. You're saying the data bears this out. My projections are this. Based on this data, I have made these assumptions. Okay? You put it to people like that in the business context, they will pay a lot more attention. And as I said, there's many freely available tools. We've got MAP. Okay? Love that tool. Makes our life a lot easier. DBA tools, go and install it, use it, become familiar with it. PowerShell is our friend. I want to do things at scale, done. Nice and easy. Once I know what's there. And with that, we're going to finish up a few minutes early, unless anyone has any questions. Any thoughts? Okay, thank you. One thing I would ask, please provide session evaluations. There's a number of different ways, and you can see on the slide there. Means that if I give this session again, if you've got feedback about how I can improve it, please provide that. If you say 4 out of 10, you sucked, tell me why I sucked, because then I'll suck less next time. But beyond that, the feedback we need, we can put on better conferences. We understand what you need. Please give us all of that feedback. Session evaluations, you're going to get surveys after the event, all that stuff. Please engage with us. Tell us what you want. By doing that, we can make sure that next year we give you all the content you need. And with that, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you staying to the end of the day. Contact details are there. Feel free to take them. Contact me. And with that, hopefully see you on the expo floor. Thank you very much.